Samuel Eto'o is one of the most successful African players of all time. Internationally, he is Cameroon's record goalscorer. He won the Africa Cup of Nations twice, in 2000 and 2002, and also a gold medal at the Sydney Olympics, all of which occurred in the background of a glittering club career, during which he starred for two of the finest sides of their generation. Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, who won a La Liga, Copa del Rey and Champions League treble in 2009, and Jose Mourinho's Inter Milan, who the very next season repeated the feat in Italy, collecting the Serie A title, the Coppa Italia, and again the Champions League in 2010. It was an unprecedented achievement which remains unmatched. Individually, Eto'o was the first player to win the African Footballer of the Year award 3 times in consecutive years, and is one of the only 2 players to have won the award on 4 separate occasions, a record he shares with Yaya Toure. But Eto'o's career cannot be described with the monochrome of the record books. He was as combustible and compelling a character as he was an incendiary and broadly talented forward. Someone who reached the top of the game, but who led anything but a typical existence once he got there. His first steps were precarious. At the age of 11, he fled a football tour of France to live for 6 months illegally with his sister. 2 years later, he was back in France, again without permission, arranging trials and searching for a club who would take a risk on a displaced teenager without proper papers. Again, he was unsuccessful and would return home, but he would leave Cameroon for good in 1997 at the age of 16. It was like a child's dream, he told Patrick Barkley in a 2008 interview. I was playing for the national team, and someone just came up to me and asked if I wanted to play for Real Madrid. He would get to play for Real Madrid, but only 3 times. His first significant season in Spain was spent on loan at Leganés in 1997-98, for whom he scored 4 times in 30 appearances, and then in 1999-2000, an encouraging year on loan at Mallorca became a permanent £4.4 million transfer. By the time he departed for Barcelona in 2004, Eto'o had amassed 54 La Liga goals for Luis Aragonés Mallorca and became the club's all-time record goalscorer in the league. So began the regal phase of his career and the rise of a forward who would become amongst the most feared in Europe. Eto'o joined a Barcelona that had just begun their rise to what they would ultimately become. Frank Rijkaard had entered his second year at the club. Players like Ludovic Juli, Deco, Juliano Belletti, and Henrik Larsson had been signed to replace a jaded Dutch core, and a young Lionel Messi had been promoted from Barcelona B. Eto'o was the marquee signing, and the €24 million spent was partly repaid immediately. Barcelona finished the season as champions, and Eto'o, playing mainly in a front 3 with Ronaldinho and Juli, was the competition's joint top scorer, matching Diego Forlan's 25 goals for Villarreal. His rainbow of abilities had begun to reveal itself. Eto'o was quick and dynamic, but also skillful and imaginative, with 2 lethal feet and the capacity to finish with great finesse or tremendous violence. He and Barcelona would win another league title in 2006, this time with Eto'o capturing the Pichichi Trophy. And in the 2007-8 season, despite Rijkaard's side losing their focus to the Catalonian nightlife, he reached 100 league goals for the club in just 5 seasons. When Guardiola was promoted to take control of Barcelona's first team, initially, alongside Ronaldinho and Deco, Eto'o was one of the players he intended to jettison as part of the squad's renewal. Eto'o's application throughout that pre-season ultimately convinced Guardiola otherwise, but according to ESPN's Graham Hunter, that was also at the urging of a group of senior players, including Carlos Puyol, Xavi Hernandez and Andres Iniesta, who recognised the forward's value to the club and spoke up on his behalf. And they were proved right. Eto'o scored 30 league goals as they finished first at a canter, and he again scored the first goal in a Champions League final, this time against Manchester United, as he and Barcelona won the European Cup for the second time that decade. But it would be his final appearance for a Spanish club. Despite their truce, Eto'o and Guardiola would never enjoy the most harmonious relationship. When the Catalonian took charge of the side, Eto'o was shifted to the right of the 3 forwards to accommodate Leo Messi as a false 9, and that seems to lie at the heart of their dispute. Relations between the two have become more cordial over time, but Eto'o has never been happy with who the architects and principals of that side were perceived to be, saying in 2018, "It was the situation back then. Messi would come later, but you can ask Xavi, Iniesta and others, that was my era." Whatever suggestions of ego lie in that episode, Eto'o was also a proud and forthright man, unafraid to stand tall against issues which unfortunately continue to challenge the game. In a February 2006 game against Zaragoza, he was subjected to sporadic monkey chants from a section of the home support. In the 76th minute, as Eto'o prepared to take a corner, he was showered with bottles and even louder chants. And Eto'o was determined to leave the field. He would eventually be dissuaded by a combination of his teammates, the referee, his manager at the time Frank Rijkaard, and Zaragoza forward Ewerton. But even today, the footage is a symbolically powerful rejection of behaviour which had become far too common in Spanish football. It's shocking footage which looks worse today than it did then. And what's really descriptive about it, however, is the passivity of many of the players on the pitch, compared with Eto'o's actions certainly, but also what would be expected today. In a 2015 interview with James Masters, Eto'o recalled the incident. The first time I experienced racism wasn't on a football pitch, but the truth is that I never thought that could happen to me on a football pitch because football is a passion. It's a feeling that touches millions of people. Sometimes the fact that you're a footballer makes you think that racism can't happen to you because you bring that passion and you express a lot of things. When it happened to me, I couldn't believe it, and in that moment, I decided to walk off the pitch. In 2009, with only 1 year left on his Barcelona contract, Eto'o rejected the offer of an extension, which came apparently with no improvement to his basic wage, and left Camp Nou for Jose Mourinho's Inter Milan as part of the deal which took Zlatan Ibrahimovic the other way. He was of course hugely successful at San Siro, completing the second stage of his double treble and starting in Mourinho's briefly brilliant team alongside Diego Milito, Wesley Sneijder and Dejan Stankovic. In 2010, in his second and final season with the club, Eto'o's world was again invaded by racism, this time as the object of chanting in a game in Cagliari. He would score the only goal in a 1-0 win, but only after the match had been suspended for 3 minutes. "You have to understand that football is just a reflection of what we have in society," he said in an interview with CNN. "It's not that football is here and society is here, no, it's a reflection of what goes on in society. Football is a great opportunity for certain people who sometimes think they're better than you or different than others to express their views as right, or as a chance to hurt other people." From 2011 onwards, Eto'o's career became slightly nomadic. He would briefly become the world's highest paid player on leaving Inter, joining Ansi Makakala, who had recently been purchased by Dagestani billionaire Suleiman Keremov, and earning a reported €20.5 million per year. After 2 years, and by then well into his 30s, he would sign 1-year deals with first Chelsea and then Everton in England before returning briefly to Italy with Sampdoria, and then finishing his career with Antalyaspor and Konyaspor in Turkey, and finally a single season in the Qatari Stars League. Eto'o was unusual, in his playing abilities obviously, but also in his eloquence around a subject which athletes have been and continue to be reticent towards. He could be different and egotistical, brash and uncompromising, but he was also blessed with an awareness and a social intelligence which separated him from most of his peers. In 2015, he was honoured with the European Medal of Tolerance by the European Council on Tolerance and Reconciliation. Moshi Kanter, the ECTR's president, praised Eto'o for having the courage and will to stand against the racists, and for building awareness and inspiring fellow footballers and millions of football fans. It was a fitting epitaph and a neat symbol for what, in effect, is a twin legacy. Firstly, he was a fabulous player who littered the European game with enduring highlights, but secondly, and probably more importantly, he was a role model for young black footballers who, sadly, are still having to be guided by the way that he carried himself.